little louder than I meant. Sorry, got a little overzealous with the gavel.
Excited.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to call this Morris City Manager interview to order. So welcome, Zoe, and congratulations on being one of the 3 finalists. I do want to just relay some housekeeping for how the proper conduct is and how this thing is going to go throughout the interview process today. This is Patrick Melvin. He is our representative from DDA. He has been instrumental in bringing these candidates to us today. So thank you, Patrick, and your company for that effort.
Pleasure working with you.
And I just want to relay to the members of the audience that this is not an opportunity for you to engage with the candidates or anything like that. We just ask for proper decorum. Try to keep your comments to yourself, and I think we'll just leave it at that. So I think how this is going to work is Patrick is going to be asking the questions, and then the city council will engage, and we do have some opportunities, and that's really up at the council's discretion. They may ask leading questions or follow-up questions, things like that. So they'll just expect probably that's going to probably happen at some point here. We have a list of about 16 or so questions that have been prepared for us in advance. So with that, I guess unless there's any questions from members of the council, we'll just get started. Patrick?
Do we want to do brief intros?
Oh, yeah, we can certainly do introductions. Of course, I'm Mayor Kevin Wohlers. Introduce yourself, I guess.
Councilmember Zach Rails.
Councilmember Jeff Miller.
Councilmember Brian Salvi.
Councilmember Kim Gullickson. And I'm candidate Zoe Johnson.
All right, well, welcome. Welcome. Just relax. We're good.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Zoe. I have a little bit of a cold, but I will get through this. So, Zoe, if you could, please describe your approach to working with a mayor and a council that may have differing priorities or political perspectives. How do you maintain trust and forward momentum? And I believe you should have, is there a list of the questions?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so you've got
Sorry,
those. Great.
Probably blended in.
Yes.
Thank you for checking. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah, so my approach with working with the mayor and council that have different priorities and political perspectives, I think really just goes back to those root values that we all hold. I think by and large, we all hold the same values near and dear to our heart. It's just the way that we're trying to get there is a little bit different with everybody. And so those perspectives, those political beliefs, you know, they might vary, but at the end of the day, I think we all want the same goals of having an engaged and informed community that feel that their quality of life is being taken care of in a proactive and thoughtful manner. And so I just think, you know, reminding council and the mayor of that at the end of every council meeting or any kind of disagreement that we might have at the dais is really important to just make sure that we're all keeping that sort of general through line consistent at the end of the day.
Thank you. The majority of Minnesota cities are statutory cities. However, the city of Morris is a charter city. Please share your knowledge of the difference between the two, charter city versus statutory city.
Yeah, so a charter city is a city that has crafted its own charter based on the state of Minnesota's statutes. So basically, a charter city can do anything that is carved out in state statute that says that a city can do that. And a charter city can take the next step and draft something in their charter that maybe isn't necessarily mentioned in state statute, so that the city can take that agency to go out and do something a little bit extra that's not necessarily mentioned in state statute. Of course, being that it's not directly preempted or anything like that, but and a statutory city is a lot more confined by state statute in what they can and cannot do. If it's not outrightly mentioned that they can and cannot do that, there's no really opportunity for a statutory city to go out and do something different that, from state statute aside from a legislative change. So when I was working for the city of Moorhead, Minnesota, they were a charter city, and so I'm a little bit more familiar with charter cities. I think then Edina is a statutory B city, so statutory A cities being that they have a city administrator, and statutory B cities, they have a council manager form of government, so a city manager. But that's the main difference. A charter city, you can really take a little bit more ownership in what you want to do in your city versus the statutory city. You're a little bit more confined.
At this point, Zoe, do you have a preference for one or the other? Like, what do you think the positives, and that being that you worked in both, positives of both? I really think that when you work in a statutory city, that you really have to rely on your relationships with your legislative elected officials a lot more. Not that you aren't relying on those relationships in a charter city, but I think because you don't have that sort of leeway that you do in a charter city, you are really tied to having those incredibly strong relationships with those state officials or federal officials. In a charter city, I think it's interesting because you can have a charter commission or a charter board, right? And you can really get the community involved in what that looks like for your town or city. And so I really appreciate just the added engagement of that kind of work. I know it's typically not a commission or board that meets very often. It's usually more of an annual type meeting, but still, I think the value is there, and I really appreciate, I think, for myself, working for a charter city a little bit more, again, because we have more of that leeway in really understanding how we can elevate the community through that charter. So that would be my preference. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Zoe, how do you get to know department heads and other key staff? What methods have you used or will you use to collaborate with staff to ensure you are tapping into their abilities and assessing their skill levels?
Yeah, great question. I really have taken the approach throughout my time in local government to really sit down with folks one-on-one, and then with a division and then a department. Take that time to get to know the person, then the division, and then their department to really understand. I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day, so I think it really is important to connect with that person one-on-one and then move into those bigger groups later to really understand the team dynamics. But my approach has always been meeting with folks individually and just sort of checking in to understand like what I can do for them and what they can do for me to ensure that we have a successful relationship, to ensure that the community is being taken care of and we're doing our jobs correctly. So yeah, I think I would continue to do those one-on-one meetings, and then I would elevate that to a division or a department or both, depending on the makeup. But yeah.
Great. Walk us through how you prepare and present an annual budget to an elected body, particularly during times of constraint or competing priorities.
Yeah, I think that's a really important. Question. I think, especially when you know that there's constraint or competing priorities, you've kind of gotten that sense from the previous budget cycle, and so I think that means the city manager's role is really trying to get that process moving earlier rather than later. And so working with the council to understand the timeline that they're comfortable with, to understand that they understand, all of the issues that we're trying to focus on, whether that's funding one division more or less, or if it's an overall like generic cut across the top that we're trying to do, something like that. Really trying to understand their perspectives earlier rather than later, so that I can get a better feeling for working with staff on how we're going to go about getting those goals completed. So I think first and foremost, we'd carve out the timeline to understand what kind of workshops or work sessions we might need to really dig into things and have a more informal conversation about everyone's goals and priorities. And then we would more likely move into more formal items in a council meeting where we're really talking about it and presenting some clear-cut information on where we're at right now. And then I also just think it's important to ensure that the community is engaged in all of this, so ensuring that that timeline has been shared with the community, And whenever we are ready to share truth in taxation, that budget hearing, I just really want to make sure that we're pushing that message out as much as we can to ensure that all the folks feel that they've had a chance to really engage and show up, or maybe provide their comments in advance if they aren't able to make it to that meeting, just to really, ensure we're promoting a fair process for all of the citizens involved. But yeah, sorry, I keep ending on.
So Zoe, what
Yeah.
would be an example to you of competing priorities?
Yeah, so a lot of the times I think it comes back to administration, what's feasible on the operational side, and then what's politically acceptable. And so I think a lot of that I'm sure it was a difficult decision to go with the county for law enforcement operations. I think that's a really emotional subject that people get, especially in greater Minnesota. I think public safety is something that we really are fortunate to have, and it's something that has been struggling, I know, in my neck of the woods up north, of just getting that kind of strong talent out there. So I think one of those examples for competing priorities on that is just understanding, maybe the level of service that we were typically okay with from that law enforcement angle. We might be able to get to a better spot if we were to do this kind of consolidation. And so while there might be those strong emotions about it and what that really means in losing a city identity versus a county sheriff's office and what that kind of merger means, I think it's important to really call that out and make it known that it is a difficult decision, but we're doing it for the right reasons. And just laying those reasons out, whether it's stewardship and we're trying to be fiscally responsible, or if it's just the way of the times of it's really difficult to get strong law enforcement talent. And so I think for the benefit of the community at large, it's just more pertinent for us to go that direction to make sure that public safety operations at large are being taken care of. So I guess that would be the example that I would give.
To just expand on that,
Yeah.
has there been any your experience of times of budget constraint
Yeah.
that would compel yourself to a different side of the competing priorities?
Sure. When I was in Olathe, Kansas, I was working in the infrastructure department, and so a lot of that was balancing utility rates and really understanding, again, what's administratively feasible with ongoing operations to ensure we're able to afford and pay for all of the water treatment and wastewater treatment that we need to keep the community growing and successful. But the city manager at that time and the city council were really trying to keep those rates low to really kind of promote more business and industry coming into the community. And so it was a lot of back and forth discussion with the city management office to really hammer home to them, I think, that kind of growth isn't possible without having a strong set of utility rates to make sure that growth is continuing to pay for growth and not that the property taxes are subsidizing that growth, to ensure that the commercial or industrial businesses are continuing to come in. I think that was a really hard conversation because everybody did want more businesses and the like to come into the community, but it was just, we need to do it in the right way. We don't want to have those kinds of issues where all of a sudden it's emergency, we've reached our capacity for water we're able to treat, and now it's an emergency. So yeah, I think that was a really good experience for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Zoe, what is your experience with unionized workforces, and how do you approach labor negotiations while maintaining a positive labor management relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really take an interest in getting to know the union representatives on a personal level, just to humanize them a little bit on the front end. I think having those relationships started before union negotiations is a really important aspect of the process. I think as you move forward, I've been involved in union negotiations where that has and hasn't been the case, and I definitely think there is a major difference in that. When I'm working for the city of Edina right now, and I have gone through firefighter unions and police unions, and I helped them a little bit at the tail end after the HR director left unexpectedly with the local 49ers and electricians union. And so I've gotten a really good feel of the different kinds of dynamics and attitudes and paces of those kinds of union negotiations. But at the end of the day, I really think that if you maintain that sort of clear as kind mentality, just understanding that we're both trying to share resources to understand where we're coming from. Sometimes it was the case where maybe the union attorney was getting different information from different sources that maybe was out of date or just not completely vetted. And then it was just a matter of the city working with that union attorney to really understand, okay, we've got the right numbers, we've got the right data, now we can make sure we're having a consistent conversation and where we're both coming from to really make sure that we're getting to the same goal of, you know, something that makes sense with the budget, but also something that shows that we're really valuing that workforce and that we want to continue to have a strong relationship and that we value them.
Zoe, economic development and redevelopment are important to Morris. Can you share a specific example where you played a direct role in advancing development or redevelopment efforts?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now I'm serving as the chair of the Values Viewfinder group, which is sort of an ad hoc group in the city of Edina that's composed of staff people that are really representative of Edina's core values, which are stewardship, sustainability, health, engagement and equity. And so that group, I was really able to work alongside our community development staff on a redevelopment project really close to the city hall. It's actually the old public works site, but it's been vacant for quite some time, I think almost 20 years at this point, and so it's been a long back and forth with councils in the past to understand what they want there, and it's never really come to fruition. There've always been a lot of cold feet and just questions of like what really fits there. And so what I was able to do with the Values Viewfinder team was really understand and carve out the impacts to the community that those different potential projects would bring to that area. So we had positive, negative, and neutral impacts covered from all those 5 values for each of the projects that had been submitted to the city to really kind of lay out to the council when they're making that decision on what kind of projects they want to see advanced, what's really moving the needle in those larger priority buckets that they might have for the community at large. And they really appreciated that. I mean, you kind of do that in your own head as a council member, right? And so it was just nice for them, I think, to have that all laid out on paper from a staff perspective. And yeah, we're trucking along with 5146 right now. We've got a great townhome and condominium and commercial restaurant space tracking right now for that area. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of different weird elevation and grading issues that they'll have with that site, but it's the most traction we've gotten on that site in the last 20 years, so we're very excited about it as a city.
Cool. Very interesting. Zoe, how do you ensure consistent interpretation and enforcement of city code and ordinances, especially when facing public pressure or criticism?
Yeah, I think consistent interpretation really stems on plain language for me. Typically in the past, I think when I was working for Moorhead specifically, a lot of their city code was really outdated, hadn't been updated in quite some time. And so a lot of what I worked with the city clerk in that space was just, we gotta simplify this. We don't need to have all of these buzzwords or old jargon that really doesn't jive with the community anymore. It needs to be simple, plain language so that everybody, staff or residents or citizens, you know, the like, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page from the get-go. And then I think when you're facing public pressure or criticism on any kind of interpretation or enforcement, I just think, you know, again, that clear is kind. You need to make sure that you're sticking with what it says in the ordinance, regardless of who it is and the criticism that you are facing. I think that consistency is paramount to understanding that this is city code, this is the law of our community, and for good reason. We're not making exceptions or anything like that just because of one instance or what may be. I think that's really important.
What would be your steepest learning curve related to the position of city manager with Morris?
Yeah. For me, I think it's a question of scale. I have worked for City of Moorhead, which is about 45,000, 46,000 residents, and then the City of Edina, which is about 52,000 residents. Those are the smallest communities I've worked for thus far in my career, and so I think really understanding the scope, how it's scaled back a little bit, and how staff are wearing multiple hats in that way, and just trying to broaden their expertise in different areas quite a bit. And so I think for me that would be a little bit different because I'm used to having a specific staff person to go to that's the expert in that specific area. And so I think it would just be a matter of being a little bit more of a learner, a little bit more of a researcher to really make sure that I'm wearing all my hats correctly in the best way that I can.
Great answer, thank you. How do you differentiate between being a coworker and a supervisor?
Oh, great question. There is a time and place for being a coworker and a supervisor. I think there's a moment for me when I start a position where I am trying to learn the people I'm working with to understand the kind of relationships that they have already maintained for themselves and the culture that pre-exists me coming into the organization, right? I'm a big context person, so I really appreciate getting the lay of the land and making sure that I'm not coming in and ruffling any feathers. I want to make sure that that my attitude and my energy is matching what they want to see in a coworker and a leader, because I am both at the end of the day. I think just ensuring that you're being honest with folks. Sometimes I've had the experiences in the past where I've worked with city managers and they have had to flat out tell their coworkers, yep, we're gonna check in and be amiable right away in our meetings, but after that I'm city manager, you are the city clerk, and we are going to continue as that way because it's a performance review, or maybe there was an issue that came up at the council meeting or something like that, and so they just needed to make sure that that was reinforced. But at the end of the day, I think when you're meeting folks, it's all stemming from that first interaction of if I were to get the job, I think that's sort of part of how I would introduce and build that relationship. It wouldn't be buddy or anything like that right away. I mean, definitely trying to get to know the person, but at the end of the day, I want to get to know them as far as my relationship as a supervisor and employee.
So just checking on this,
Yeah.
just to have the ability to have a good working relationship with staff, but to remember that, yes, as a city manager, you are responsible over the department heads, your co-workers, and you're comfortable with that. You're my best friend, but no, I'm ultimately your supervisor and have to be comfortable to make those decisions.
Yeah, we might sit next to each other at the high school basketball or football games, but at the end of the day, 8 to 4:30 or 7:30 to 5, I'm your superior, and you need to respect that, and I think we both need to respect that. It's still a relationship, and so there needs to be that kind of communication and understanding between, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Zoe, this position involves joint powers and regional collaboration. How do you approach partnerships where authority, funding, or accountability is shared?
Incredibly enthusiastically. I think those relationships are really important, and a lot of the times I think what you bring to the table compels folks to bring the same kind of energy or knowledge in return. And so I think coming at those relationships vehemently and understanding that we're only as good as the sum of our parts, and so a lot of that partnership I know is what made Morris so successful between the schools, the city, the county, and the local university. I think that's something that I just want to perpetuate, and maintain. And so trying to understand what I can do on my end to make sure that anything regarding authority, funding, or accountability, I'm just trying to make sure that we're checking in. I'm trying to make sure that my staff have all the information they need to ensure that whatever job we're doing in that sort of relationship is covered. But yeah, I just think you have to bring the energy that you want to see from that kind of relationship, and so I think that goes without saying.
What strategies do you use to stay current on legislative changes affecting local government? And how do you translate that information into action for the council?
Love this question. So I'm really involved in different member-based advocacy groups, So ICMA, NLC, MCMA, Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, League of Minnesota Cities, Small Cities Coalition, I think, is out there too. I haven't checked in with their legislative priorities in a little bit, but yeah, I just think tracking with those groups and volunteering to be on committees or support groups to really make sure that all perspectives are being communicated to them and shared up so that they can ensure that the advocacy that they're pushing at the state and federal levels are really capturing the full picture of the state of Minnesota or Stevens County specifically, or City of Morris specifically, quite honestly, especially with the state. And so I think how I translate that information into action for the council, that would be a lot of me putting my thinking cap on of what is something feasible that we can do that's also politically acceptable in the community. And so a lot of that, I think, of what I've done in the past is just tracking a legislative dashboard on any kind of big ticket items that the community is really vested in, to understanding that we're tracking with all of that, we've got our up-to-date information on all of that. And then especially at work sessions, I think, or workshops, I think it's important to have that kind of open dialogue, because sometimes in a council meeting it's a little bit too formal to really feel like you can have that dialogue, I think. And so I really appreciate legislative workshops to really ensure that I'm hearing out the perspectives of the entire council. So whatever action that we can come up with together, or maybe I have homework to go back and think of something with the help of the league, or even reaching out to other communities around us to see if there's something that we want to tackle together. I think that's something that is really important to me to take care of in more of that informal setting of a workshop session.
Zoe, tell us about a time you had to manage a high stress or crisis situation. What was your role and how did you lead through it?
Yeah, so this is actually very topical. Something that I have been working on with the City of Edina as of lately is the Immigration Response Task Force with Operation Metro Surge in the Twin Cities. It was a charge from my city manager that we were creating this task force, and the task force chair at that time was out on vacation that he wanted to appoint. And so he appointed me in the interim to kind of figure out what a task force even looks like for something like that, right? We don't have a lot of leeway in how a city can handle or work with federal agents and how they're conducting their business in the community. And so a lot of it was reaching out to staff members to ensure they're comfortable with it, because again, it's a pretty politically charged ask, honestly, to put yourself out there in that way, to reach out to businesses and community members and places of worship to really understand what their impacts have been, how we can help them, or if they don't want any part of us reaching out to them about something like that. It can be a pretty volatile and intense situation, especially for law enforcement. And so I think that's been something that I've really taken a great pride in, the fact that I was able to help the city figure that kind of council charge and build a kind of framework to really understand all of the initiatives that we were getting from residents, what we could actually handle from a city, what we could not touch because it was completely out of our hands, out of our authority, and what maybe we can work with our our partners on to really try and figure out if there is a solution, but, you know, that's more of a long-term approach. It would be something that we need to continue, so yeah, it was a tall order, but we had about 47 initiatives come from community members, and I charged those with different prioritization levels based on, again, what we could legally handle, what we definitely couldn't legally handle, and then what is going to need a slow approach. So it's been an 11-member task force, and I've been the co-chair since the chair came back from vacation. So it's been great, but definitely high pressure.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Zoe, how do you prioritize infrastructure investment and long-range planning while balancing short-term operational needs?
I think a lot of this comes back to strategic planning with the city council. I think when we can be proactive as a unit, to really understand those bigger long-term investments on a much earlier end than oftentimes they come at cities in the CIP process. So I think it all stems back to strategic planning and understanding that the city is able to control what we can control, and we only have a finite options of financing tools at our disposal to really understand what we can accomplish and when and why. And so I think in balancing short-term operational needs, a lot of it is making sure that we have a good amount of reserves in our back pocket so that we are comfortable with making those maybe emergency transactions when necessary, to make sure that nothing is being stopped in day-to-day operations, to make sure that we can stay on track for that longer term investment, because at the end of the day, the residents are seeing the day-to-day. They're not necessarily seeing the long term as much, because it's quite a ways away. So I think it's important to make sure that the day-to-day is being taken care of, because if the water isn't running, if the sewage is backing up, if the trash isn't being collected, I mean, that's the stuff that residents are going to notice and take to heart. I mean, a project that's going to come to the CIP slate in 2030 is something that's definitely important and means a lot to the community, but we need to make sure that we're tackling both with the kind of finesse that's necessary, I think. So I really appreciate strategic planning in that mindset, but also a healthy reserves definitely is really important for that kind of emergency spending.
So how would you involve department heads in your long-term planning?
Yeah, I think strategic planning is something that happens with city staff and city council. So I think having all of us at the table together, or most of us, I think, at the table, is something that's really important to me, to make sure that there's buy-in first and foremost on both the council and the staff side, because you can make all of the plans you want, but if the council doesn't adopt them, or the staff doesn't buy into them or wants to tackle them, it can be a really hard going, I think, to really make sure all of that comes to fruition in the way that's the most successful and the best outcome for the community. So yeah, I just think I would involve them as much as I can, but of course with whatever level of comfortability the council is okay with as well. I think that'd be a conversation, but I would really appreciate staff could be involved so that they can feel like they are a part of the process, because I've been in communities where strategic plans or comprehensive plans have been passed and staff weren't notified, weren't brought to the table, just didn't really have a say in the matter at all. And so that can really be disheartening when you're the person at the end of the day that is oftentimes implementing a lot of that. You know, that's your job. So that's my perspective on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
The city of Morris has an engaged group of citizens. Thank you for being here. How would you get to know the community if you were the next city manager? What specific process would you use?
Yeah, I mean, a specific process that comes to mind, I've been really interested in the idea of satellite city halls. So that is an idea where basically you just communicate to the community that you are going to be maybe at the Super Value from 8 to 5 on a Saturday. And you can come up, ask me anything you want, just get to know me, and just try to chat with people to put my name out there and make sure that they know that I care about them, and I want to make sure that they feel that they can come to me. It's not anything that they should feel like they have to wait for a council meeting or anything like that. My phone is always on. My door is for the most part always open unless I have something going on in my calendar. But I'm very good at getting back to people, and I really appreciate the level of engagement that I've had in the communities that I've worked for. And if anything, I just want to build upon that. So whether it's citizens government academies where we can take a deeper dive and really help the citizens be even more engaged on what the city is doing and how they can be better involved in it. I think opportunities like that are really important, especially in smaller communities. And so yeah, I really appreciate the moments where I'm able to engage with the citizens and residents. So I really like the idea of satellite city halls, like going to the grocery store, going to the local basketball game even, and just like sitting in the commons area or just sitting outside and chatting with folks. But yeah, just meeting folks where they're at.
Zoe, what do you see as the most critical role of a city manager in a community like Morris over the next 5 years?
It's a great question. I think for a community like Morris, especially right now at the state legislature, there's so many issues happening right now that aren't necessarily on the city agenda. And so I think for the city of Morris, it's just perpetuating the fact that we are here, we have a voice, we have goals, and a lot of the goals that we've been able to accomplish already are quite impressive. And I think telling that story is really important, and drawing the attention to Morris is really important. So I think the city manager in the next 5 years really has a responsibility, regardless of who they are, to really make sure that the city of Morris's story is being consistently told across the state, across the nation, when it comes to making sure that we're getting that state or federal grant funding that we need to keep trucking on our bigger priorities that we have for the community. Yeah, I just think a lot of it is just maintaining those partnerships and building upon them from what's already been existing.
Zoe, what is it about the city of Morris that makes you want to be the next city manager?
It's a great question. I'm very excited to get back to small town USA, especially Minnesota small towns. Minnesota Nice is real, especially so in greater Minnesota. I have always come to Morris for high school playoff games. I used to watch my friend Maddie Smart play basketball here, and my cousin Grace also played basketball here, Grace Hughes. I just really, I love the community, I love the history that it has, and the sustainability projects that they've been able to accomplish is really quite astounding. And I just want to be a part of a city like that, a community that has a story to share like that, and see what I can do to help, or even just maintain what's already been there. I think Blaine, the city manager prior, just did an amazing job at really balancing the different dynamics between the community, and I really would look to him for guidance when necessary, because I think he's done such a great job. But yeah, I just really want to be the city manager here because it's a successful community, and I want to be a part of that success. I mean, like we were talking about on the tour, it's a very stable community, and if we can build upon that stability, that'd be amazing.
So we're down to our last question, Zoe,
Yeah,
and that is, what questions do you have for the council?
thank you. So, how do you prepare for council meetings typically to ensure you're successful in understanding everything that's happening at those council meetings? And what role does a city manager play in making sure that you're successfully informed and prepared for those council meetings or workshops?
I guess I could start. You know, we, every Friday we get our agendas and our packets, if you will, that are presented to us. And so I normally spend, the weekend prior, leading up to that city council meeting, going through all the different resolutions, ordinances, whatever is before us, just to educate myself a little bit on what's before us. And if I don't know, I have to do a little research on my own, independent research, and just kind of prepare yourself for, that way. I mean, we've, over the years since I've been on city council, I think our city manager, Blaine, you'd refer to, and said city manager Shrupp did a good job of providing enough background information for us. Sometimes when things get a little bit over our pay grade, so to speak, then you got to be humble enough to ask questions, and just so you know when you're sitting down Tuesday night that you can make an informed decision. So that's really how I prepare.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar for me, right? I very regularly, like Mayor Wallace mentioned, packets come out Friday. I wait until Sunday because Saturday usually doing things with the family, right?
Yeah.
But Sunday evening is when I take and look at the packet, and same sort of deal. If I don't know something, or I try and do as much research as possible, as much time that I feel I need to get my head wrapped around it. One of the things that I like to do is think about, what would potential questions that someone that doesn't have as much information ask, right? So we can get that accomplished. I know rest of council does a good job of that too. I know I don't have all the answers, right? None of us do. So, but spending time being as prepared as possible, and then checking it Monday and Tuesday as well, because there's potential add-ons or whatever. So,
Sure.
so making sure that or that I personally am prepared for that as well.
Just a nice open door. Yes, the packets, we get the information and over the weekend, but if there's questions or things that we do question or don't know, to feeling comfortable with the open door policy with city manager first or staff to stop or call or text to get correspondence back and forth. It gives us time, if there's some project or something we're doing for us, to be able to go out and look at and see, gosh, is this gonna fit in, we're doing some tax increment financing, or we're gonna run water and sewer to potentially some other site. Is that the best option, or can we come at it from a different way? So just feeling comfortable to do the little bit of the legwork, homework, or the asking questions back and forth with an open door policy with either each other. If somebody knows more about a project or something that's going on the different boards that we all serve on. So just using our expertise on who's serving on the library board or who's on the planning commission, or just using all the tools that we have back and forth.
Yeah. Can I
Zoe,
Yeah, sorry.
excuse me, I want to just expand on that, because I think it's really important. We really need, and we have an engaged community. As you can see, we have several representatives sitting here before us, and it's important for not only them to know, but we really do appreciate correspondence from the citizens at large. I know some may not think we take their considerations seriously, but we do, and I know I personally do too. And I think where we're getting to as a community right now is a better spot than we've been for a while. We do have people reaching out to us prior to the meetings, because they also see the agenda on Fridays, and there are several of them that take the time and opportunity to dig into that. And there are also a lot of them, or majority of them are sitting here. I want to just commend them for that, because it's important that we as a community, solicit feedback from our members of the community at large. And I just want people to know and understand that we do take all of those considerations and those emails seriously as we make up our decisions. So,
I think on the question you asked is the importance that we've done recently in the recent years is some of our planning meetings, our work sessions that we're doing every fifth Tuesday in a month. I think they're very important for the council and for the city manager to engage, to inform us of what the plans are, because your question really alludes to what we're doing here today. It alludes to why you're sitting here, why we're asking these questions, because the city manager is the person running the city on the day-to-day, and strategically, and doing all the things that we don't do as a council. We all have personal businesses or jobs that we do, and the community at large does the same. So as we connect at those work sessions, we are informed by you, which is great, or informed through emails. And then we take that information, or I do, and I think about what's the best for our community. Is this the way we want to go? And so I think that's the communication that I get through the city manager and the council to prepare. And I think that's very important, and that's because you are on an island.
Yeah.
Don't be mistaken. The city manager is on an island. We're here to help, but you're out there by yourself. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't really have anything extra to add.
Yeah.
I kinda said it all.
I would also just add if, I have worked with city managers previously that have, done bi-weekly or, weekly check-in calls with, council members, so that would be something, I'm not sure if Blaine or Rebecca had ever done something like that with you, or what your availability might be for something like that, but, especially on those council weeks, I think it's important if there are any, questions, it's nice to have a kind of like long-standing meeting like that, or a call on the calendar, just to make sure everybody does have that opportunity to call and check in. You know, I think that's important. But
Are you suggesting that you would make the call to the council members?
I'm suggesting that I would ask you if you would be interested in having some kind of meeting like that. I would definitely be interested in that. I think that's something that we can do to make sure that everybody is on the same page, and if they do have any questions asked, they are answered. Not that we can't ask them again to make sure that the community is getting the answers to those questions as well, but just to make sure that that kind of relationship is encouraged, I think that's really important.
What you're talking about is communicating.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
The open door policy,
Yeah.
which is both Blaine and Becca.
Okay.
If you have a question, to feel comfortable,
Okay.
to make a phone call or text, hey, available, stop in, sit down and feel comfortable with our city manager. Yes, and I value that, to be able to just a text or a call
Yeah.
and stop in, and here's 3 subjects that I had talked with so-and-so and so-and-so are on my mind, and we need to, can you look into more of that, and to have that rapport back and forth with your council and mayor.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, none of us like surprises, right?
Right.
So I know city manager gets, and our staff people, they field calls all day long, all week long. And, it's nice to know that if there's an issue going, that's gonna come before that, maybe they had to deal with something that we don't have any idea about. So it'd be an opportunity to let us know what's going on behind the scenes, so to speak,
Yeah,
so
being even more proactive.
I think it's
than-
important.
Yeah.
It's a very good question.
And then I think my next question, thinking more organizationally, I guess, what do you perceive to be the biggest weakness in your organization as a city of Morris?
Do we have any?
They seem wonderful. Everyone.
I'm being facetious. Of course, we all got areas we can improve on. Yeah, really, I think the communication piece is, we just talked about, we can never get good enough at that. I think that's really important, we have to make decisions based on, the city as a whole, but yet knowing we have to listen to the constituents as well. So balancing all of that out, making tough decisions sometimes when we have to, but I think that's one area we could probably get better at, and I think it's just ongoing.
Yeah, thank you.
Just keeping in mind all the different things we have in our community that my group thinks that my priority is, if it's the business district, if it's the university, if it's the business, agricultural outside of our community that contributes largely, but just all the different little pieces of the puzzle that we have to keep in mind, and that's a constant ongoing battle to try to work together with everybody collectively.
Yeah.
You know, the park group that thinks that we need to have everything expanded there, or the different, just everyone in their own little, what your priorities in your world are, that trying to get everybody to work together in unison on that. Some days, just to step back and remember that we gotta try to work together with everybody and continue to grow. As the tour in the bus saying, the jobs we have here, the university, or this business, and it just, when you sit down, and we talked about it shortly when we got back, it's mind-boggling when you say 40, 50 employees here, or 500 there, or 700 here, or 250 or 300, but just how that impacts our community.
I think my last question would be to ask you all to embellish a little bit more on, or add to my perception of the town-gown relationship between community members and the local university. From what I've been able to see, it's nothing but positive. I mean, with all the partnerships that you're able to do in the community. But I guess tell me a little bit more about the typical dynamics that are at play from the community members and then the local university. If there are often struggles, I guess, or different opinions, or there have been instances where I've been in communities that I perceived the university as having a really great withstanding relationship with everybody in the community, but that wasn't necessarily the case when I came in and learned a little bit more about the community's priorities and how they felt that the university did or did not fit into those. So I guess I would just ask you if you could speak to that a little bit more.
I think that for me, the priorities for sure to the city is providing the services to everybody, okay? And it's budgetary, it's financial, all right? University is educational. You know, they're based out of the University of Minnesota and stuff like that. So I think that sometimes there's a disconnect between what we have to do fiscally and what they can do fiscally, okay?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that the college balances into town just fine. I mean, I'm an alumni from here, and I don't see any issues with that. We work closely with that, but sometimes we have constraints, and you've worked in city government, and financial constraints sometimes overrule certain people's priorities or what you would want it to be. So, but I would see that as a difference. But other than that, we like having the school here, and I think, what is it, 1, 2, 4 of us graduated from there. So,
Thank you.
Well, I know I'll be forever indebted to the university for the education that I received, because it certainly opened a lot of doors, and the university is not a threat. I think maybe there are some members of our community that at times maybe look at the university as a threat for whatever reason, or maybe two separate communities, but we're not two separate communities in my view, and I think we've done a really good job of working with the university when we can. All of our sustainability projects, the Morris model, you know, there is no politics involved in any of that stuff. It's just, you know, what are you gonna do that's right for the community?
Right.
And, you know, and that's really the question. I think it's more of an attitude and a mindset that people need to approach when there isn't two separate communities. We're one community, one Morris. And I think that's the latest mantra. I think I got a shirt that says that. So, and there's a lot of truth to that. It's not just words. You know, we just need, and that's the approach we need to take as a community.
I think the relationship is what it needs to be as far as we want to work together for the same goal. But we're also two separate entities. I mean, you have students there who want to be in their own university. They don't want the outside townies, as we used to be called, to be interfering with their life at the college. So I think the balance there is there and good, and that when it's something that needs for the city as a whole, we work together with the university and the school system. When it's something that the university needs to take care of on their own campus, it's their deal. I mean, they're very self-sufficient in whatever they have. So the relationship is one of, we're promoting, we need the university here. But it's one of also, I believe, we also realize it's a separate institution, and that we can do what we can for the city with the university involved, but as Brian said, we're here to run the city
Right.
as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think too, sometimes there isn't an attitude maybe of some people that they don't work together, but I don't think that's accurate. I think that's just as anything, there's a few people, but I don't know. I think it's a good relationship, and we've done well with different things, so.
And I think both entities acknowledge that as well,
Yes, yeah.
right?
True.
And
That's great.
that's 3/4 of the deal right there.
Yeah.
A lot of open doors with the
Mhm.
sports, the music, the theater, the different dining that's open, that it's an open door, you're welcome from the university to the community. Also with the community with different things with the welcoming or the businesses. But also we have to keep in mind, almost half of our housing in our community is rental property, which a large portion of that relates to the college. So sometimes we have a little bit of conflicts with some of our inspections, or people are upset because the rules and regulations and decent housing. But that's just part of being a good neighbor or a good community, is to have a standard for properties and trying to make sure with some of the different ones there. But yeah, they're a very large part of our community with housing, because your first year or newer students probably on campus or in the apartments or dorms, but the majority are living off campus and in housing. So just trying to make good neighbors in parking and just trying to make them fit in and within reason.
That's great. Thank you. Those were the 3 questions that I had prepared. Thank you. Great answers. Appreciate that.
Let's see. We're right here, right? So we're supposed to take lunch at 11:30. So I'll recess for lunch. If there's no other questions, we'll just call this, it's a brief recess until our next. Okay. All right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time, Zoe. I know you got
Yes, good job.
Thanks, good luck.
Thank
a
you.
few more interviews, so.
Yes. Very excited.
They get tougher after this one.
Yes.